this is Lisa from Question and Narrative. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It is October the 14th, and I am lucky here today to be with a woman who I've actually been listening to lately and have had such beautiful, positive energy from. So I was just grateful she said, okay to speak to. Anina, how are you today? And welcome to the show.
I'm good, Lisa. Thank you for having me. And I've been watching you for quite a while as well with Honey when you do your shows together and really enjoying it and resonating with you. So it's wonderful today, just meeting online and sharing
It
together.
It is wonderful. Thank you. And it's a pleasure because I think all of us right now are sharing our experiences of what this journey is. And none of us can say with certainty what's going to happen next, except for how we're trying to deal with it. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about. But I mean, if you could just give my audience here a little bit of just a few minute background about where you come from, what your expertise is, and what you're doing right now.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we chatted just before we started recording. We're kind of a little bit similar in our background in a way that we started out as creatives. Um, actually, when I had a choice of career, I was like, it was very diverse. I like law, and then I also like psychology, and I also loved creativity and design. So I was either going to be a lawyer, a psychologist, or an architect slash interior designer. And
Mhm.
then I was like, okay, now I'm going to choose the creative side. And I ended up studying jewelry design and starting off very creative. And I was always creative, very creative as a child as well. But somewhere sort of in my mid to late 20s, I got thrust into uh, the business world, which was initially in the jewelry industry. And my left brain just sparked. And I was like, ooh, I like this. And it felt like a
Mm.
challenge for me. And I fell in love with business in all aspects and spent time in different aspects of business initially just to get that grounding experience. I was lucky enough to be kind of I don't want to say groomed because that's got such a negative um, connotation lately, but I really got by the CEO of that company at the time, got taught in different departments, and I fell in love with running business. Eventually I started my own business, ran that for 15, 16 years and started various companies and projects. But there was something that called me back to, okay, you need to get on track now. That was good. You had to develop those skills, but it's time to get back into your life path. And I always had an interest in health and wellness and the esoteric astrology and, the unseen world. But at that point, it was like, oh, no, we don't go there. We don't talk about that stuff. But
Wonderful.
then
Yeah, keep
yeah, and
going.
then 2020 came, and the rest is history. I think we all just got activated in a big way, and we all had that major awakening and got thrust us onto a different path, which is really, I believe, helping humanity now doing this big transformation and awakening and ascending process of the planet.
That's wonderful. And yeah, you're right. That's, first of all, it's a beautiful experience that way. And it is really interesting. It's always the left brain and the right brain together. You started on the design side. I started out as a classical musician. You're right. And those are all patterns. And art is pattern. And I was
Mhm.
just listening to something, and I'll be intrigued by that, that it is, it used to be, we talked about the Fibonacci sequence,
Mhm.
the foundation of nature. But that was a 10 base, which is actually supposedly now the aberration of our current universal numbering system. And now
Yes.
the real truth of the matter is it's on a 12 system. And the Fibonacci, I'm sorry, this is how it goes when we just talk and we got this. The Fibonacci sequence is actually, it eats the power as it goes up. Whereas the 12 decimal system is the power that is self-generating over and over again, which is
Mhm.
exciting. And that is art, that is nature, which is very exciting how we came from that side, and now we're adding the business side. But this
Absolutely.
this
Love
is
it.
yeah, this is really wonderful. I think all of these different things now are coming out, and that leads sort of the key point about what I thought we would talk about a little bit is about the truth keeps coming out. It can't stop flowing out. And I wanted to get an understanding from you and just get a perspective. Some of the truth, so we hear the times that as the truth comes out, we're all going to be shocked. But we as the star seeds are supposed to bring the truth out. How important do you believe it is right now for us to know the truth? And what does this truth really mean?
Mm. I think it's an unfolding journey. I was talking the other day about discernment. I actually did a little video about discernment because obviously it's a muscle that needs to be practiced and exercised, and we learn more discernment over time. So we learn to discern between truth and falsehood. But that in itself, I believe, is evolving. So even for us that woke up early, that are the star seeds, the ones that came here on a mission that suddenly got activated a couple of years ago, even for us, I believe that truth is evolving. And that's why I said the other day, the cue boards say the end will surprise everyone, or the end is not for everyone. And I think even us will be surprised by certain truths, that we'll learn, perhaps
Mm,
about our history, how we came to be, or, we know about the Anunnaki and, all of those stories. But what is really the truth? Are there going to be some surprises in there? Are there going to be some surprises? I believe as we evolve into 5, perhaps 6, even 7D, the perception of truth and perception of reality will change. And
mm,
so there are certain things that we can't quite perceive right now, I believe, and that is what is evolving. Our DNA is upgrading and evolving, and so our understanding. So in terms of, yes, there's a spiritual war going on the planet, and there's certain things that are not right and that need to be corrected, and there is certain truths and certain falsehoods. We know that. But I
mhm,
do think there are going to be nuances to that. And we're also going to be moving out of polarity. So, you know, so perhaps what we feel is black and white at the moment are going to somehow blend a little bit as well as we go along. And
mm.
when we out of that polarity mindset, we're not going to look at things the same as what we do now. So it's a difficult concept that I don't even quite know how to get across. Um, but I think in terms of who we are as beings, and the very nature of reality and what we perceive that as to be is going to change. And I believe those that are doing the spiritual and the inner work, the shadow work, and all the things that we do to evolve are going to get to that point much quicker. They are that community, they're only into truth, but they don't do the spiritual work. They believe, oh, we're just going to go to 5D and everything's going to be fixed. Everything's going to be cool. There's going to
Mm,
be
mhm,
abundance. There's going to be peace. Everything's going to flip. And it can't just flip. It's an evolutionary process that we all have to go through. And if the spiritual evolution doesn't keep up with the other side of things, well, then we're going to get a distorted sense of truth, perhaps. So I don't know if that even answers your question, but that
No, this
probably
is,
raises more questions.
yeah, it does, but that's actually exactly what I want to do. You said a bunch of things that were very, very interesting, and you're right, it is an evolutionary process. And one of the things, really what I'm trying to get at here is that we're looking at truth, and the first thing it triggers with me is that I keep on getting this visualization in my mind about, as the truth comes out, I'll be like, oh, yep, I knew that one. No, I knew that one. And then I'm going to be like, oh, didn't know that one. And
Hmm.
interesting. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is like, in a way, I'm sure that's how the universe is helping me practice to say that as I too did not anticipate something, I'm going to have to take it in that, oh, plot shift, plot change, kind of a way to do that. And as you were speaking, I was like, just remember that visualization keeps coming into my mind for me to be aware as those of us who have been exploring the spiritual path and the truth, that I'm going to be surprised. And don't be surprised when you are surprised. And I'm like,
Exactly.
that's interesting. But you said something that I think I'd really like to go a little bit further on. There are variations on the theme of humanity, or as we are awakening through all of this. And you're saying that there's this one area that is focused in on truth, and they haven't done the spiritual side, or they haven't focused as much on the spiritual side. And there you then linked it to abundance. And I think that's a very important link that you just made, because it's like, if I get the truth, then I get the money. That was interesting to me because I think that's a very important point, because people are, as the real part of the question is, why is truth so important? And why would it be important to the variations of that? So maybe if you could explain a little of that, because I loved that linkage that you had there.
Mm. I was just thinking, I think it was just yesterday about the fact that there will be abundance, and are we actually ready as a civilization for that abundance, because we've lived in lack for so long? What is that
Mm.
going to do to people's minds? How are they going to process that? They say sometimes money can corrupt, and I feel like we've got to be spiritually mature and ready to step into this abundance with responsibility, firstly, and secondly, let go of the need for all these material things, because that lack mindset is so deeply ingrained that we just want to collect, we just want to gather. I'm talking in general civilization, not talking about some of us that are a little bit more evolved, but as a civilization, we have to let go of that very deep programming. We've been living in lack for so long, and that leads to competition. It leads to hoarding, gathering, holding on to stuff, not sharing. um, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that abundance. And perhaps not everyone will be that abundant initially. Perhaps there will be, those humanitarians that will be trusted with projects that will have extreme abundance, while the rest get acclimatized to, firstly, having enough, getting out of fight or flight, that survival mode into creation mode, because that in itself is a big shift that a lot of people are, and the ones that are not awake right now, they have to still go through that evolutionary process, and to be careful that money doesn't corrupt them, because money makes everything easier, right? It's like, okay, well, I've got money now, I can just sit back and not do much, and be on a holiday and buy a private jet, and do the things. And it lets you
Yeah.
forget about our responsibility as leaders of the new earth to really make sure
Mm.
everyone evolves onto the level that we are, that we can collectively as a planet ascend, not just some of us.
It's so interesting you said money makes everything easier. So let's imagine a world where everybody has all of their needs met, and they are coming from a place where that is new. So that transition that you just eloquently discussed, which is, how do you go from this lack, feeling of lack to and scarcity to abundance? So if you have a lot of money and then you are in a world that no longer has a need, it might not be so easy to get things done because you don't have anybody to do it.
Well,
Because
there's that too.
that to me is like part of like when I look at this and say like we go from lack to pure abundance. Like I'm living in Europe right now. I'm living in Italy in particular. And I'm sure there was a divine plan about why I'm choosing to live here right now and what I'm doing. And it is mind opening, and because I've come from New York and I lived in Bermuda, and I lived in a world where you just work, work, work. America is work, 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 work. And we don't think about it anything else but that. But we also, in the New York area, and wouldn't even say this all over America, but in New York in particular, and most of America, you have this like, I can do it. The government doesn't tell me no, the world doesn't tell me no, but I can do this. I can do this if I want to, if I work hard enough. This they'll do, you still have to work. In Italy, no, they don't have that mindset. Just as an example, I was having a conversation about the healthcare system, because people here, they say it's free healthcare. Of course, they have taxes, but we in America also have taxes, but we have to have health insurance, and that health insurance doesn't pay for anything. And many people go into financial bankruptcy because of a health problem. And my Italian friend was saying, that's ridiculous. That's impossible. I don't know how you can live that way. And it's like, but you live in a world where the government takes care of you. So your next steps in your belief system says that, oh, the government does some good. Whereas my belief system is government does no good. I don't want a government. My government's not there to back me up. They're just there to take. They're like, the people in New York City who's like at Christmas time, I need a tip, I need a tip. And yeah, but that belief system is based on the worlds we grew up in. And I looked at them as like, I understand now why they don't fight as much here with their
Hmm.
government.
Hmm.
I'm not sure he understood why we do fight, because he's like, that's just wrong and inhuman. I couldn't live that way. I'm like, but you have to put yourself in that position. And I think we're going to be going into these massive conflict about the belief systems that we've been raised with and
Yeah.
how scarcity has impacted us, like what you were just talking about there.
Yeah. And I think, that leads me to the idea of sovereignty and what that means for different people in different
Mhm.
countries and cultures. Because exactly there in Europe, like in Italy, I've got family in France as well, and they're the same. It's like, no, but the government gives me this and that, and healthcare and pension, and I have to work until that so that the government can pay my. And that is not sovereignty. When you're not self-responsible, when you are still waiting for a nanny state to give you something, that
Mhm.
is avoidance of self-responsibility,
Mhm.
and we cannot be in that place. We've got to learn to be self-responsible and get out of victimhood, because now we believe, no, the government owes us that. And it's like,
Mhm.
just get away from the idea that the government owes you something and
Mhm.
make things for yourself, even if it's small, even if it's, you know, even if you have to really take care of your health in order not to get sick. That is self-responsibility in itself.
Mhm.
And that is going to be a hard one for people in Europe. And in general, in most of these Western countries, well, within Europe, they they haven't had it very hard. They've been pampered for a long time. You look at us in South Africa, people are, yeah, they are self-starters. They fend for themselves. They don't wait for the government to give them anything, because they
Mhm.
might wait their entire lives for it. So, and we've had it hard here. We've had a lot of conflict, racial conflict, and people fighting for themselves. And so we know what it is to suffer in a way that now we can appreciate life, first of all, and second of all, we are strong and we are resilient. But the people in Europe, how resilient are they? Because they're so pampered and looked after, and by design as well. The government wants them dependent. And in France, you look at people there, entrepreneurship is not such a thing there, because you get a good job, the government looks after you. Entrepreneurship and being independent is not encouraged at all. Of
Yeah.
course, there are many entrepreneurs, but in general, for the populace, they're not encouraged to start their own business, to be independent from the government. They're encouraged to be dependent on the government, and that's going to be a big thing to move past, because as we see things shifting around the world, governments reducing in size, perhaps to 10% what they are now, that means
Mhm.
people will have to start governing themselves and learning how to look after their own stuff, and perhaps more operate
Mhm.
on a community level, where communities come together, they look
Mhm.
after their town, they make sure it's clean, they make sure, they have electricity and they've got water and everything is running
Mhm.
smoothly, as opposed to just, oh, well, I pay taxes, so the government must just sort it out, and not actually knowing what it means to, govern yourself. And we're going to have to get to that point one way or another. And each country is going to have different challenges to deal with.
And it's
So,
fascinating. Here in the Western world, I think the biggest control mechanism outside of money, which is control for the entire world, or the entire world that we know, is about energy, the
mm,
access and use of energy. So, one of the things that's very clear in Europe in particular is that you always hold back from the use of energy. Everything is about saving for energy because energy is so expensive, which they did on purpose. That energy also leads to what you were talking about is entrepreneurship. So it's not just the energy to power up AI, networks, or to do your homes, but it's your physical energy. I think it really goes across the board on that. And this is something that when you look at it right now, I'm seeing that the social media is doing a very good job of seeding the concept to those who are have their eyes open of the alternatives that are out there. So specifically, as we're building certain things out here in Italy, the biggest thing is always like the government is forcing the use of photovoltaic energy. Now,
Mhm.
they will give you 85% of your investment bank. Of course, you have to pay it first, and then they give a loan. And of course, then they're still making money on it. We all know the little games that they play, but they're doing that very specifically. And that's the pattern stuff that we have to look at. It's like, why does government want me to do that? They want to, there's this concept, we could talk about concept of control, concept of putting things in there that are actually quite negative for your health with the electromagnetic frequencies, all of these different things, but also they just don't have the ability to build the infrastructure. So they think you'll say, oh, this is good, you're doing something really good. But right now, we don't really need the infrastructure that these governments have done. It's not that centralized concept. And what I'm seeing right now, and this is sort of the pattern that I see, is that everything is going away from centralized to decentralized, which is exactly the model of blockchain: decentralization and verification, and no need for the middle people to add all those different things. And I'm curious what you're seeing there in terms of centralizing. So South Africa, maybe if you could give us a little bit of background, what's happening in South Africa. Is there a strong centralized government right now?
There is, and as you may know, South Africa is a Commonwealth country. So, together with Australia, Canada, New Zealand, these are all Commonwealth countries that are essentially under the crown. And I don't think many South Africans even think or realize that we are a Commonwealth country. They think they were free in 1994 when Mandela came into power, but not knowing that they actually re-signed into the Commonwealth at that point.
Mhm.
Um, so, everything that's been happening here has been with an agenda to control and could take control of resources, including organized chaos and corruption and decaying of our systems of control. So I think
Mhm.
we are in a flux at the moment because I have the sense that Trump has now taken control of the monarchy and the Commonwealth countries, um, and that somehow force is going to be changed. Some people are going to get the option to make it right and do the right thing. Others are going to be, you know,
Thank you, but
prosecuted for
doesn't
crimes
work.
against. But yeah, we're moving out of this control system. And as you said, initially, like the Fibonacci sequence it's a parasitic system in a way. It's a system of consumerism. So you use energy, but you never give it back. Whereas the organic 12 base spiral is about self-generating that energy and everything. And that goes for everything. And the control of energy around the world has been about lack as well.
Mhm.
Money, energy, those are the two biggest ones that control us because we can't live without those two things, supposedly.
Yeah.
And here in South Africa, our electrical grid has been disintegrating and collapsing for many years. And so people become quite self-independent, independent in a way. Everyone got their own solar panels and, which that's another debate. Um, and so people have made sure that they're not dependent on the state because they might not have electricity for a couple of days, or
Yeah.
they might have rolling blackouts every day. So people just make a plan. But now even they started penalizing. The government started penalizing. It's like, okay, if you're not going to use my electricity, I'm going to actually penalize you for supplying your own electricity, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so you must register your solar panels and then you will be charged a fee because now you're not using our system, and then now we don't sell you as much electricity as we used to. Anyway, those are all, I believe those are transitional things that are going to disappear. And, once we fully integrate with 0 point energy, free energy, well, that's just
Mhm.
going to change everything. because now people are no longer independent. I mean, dependent on the government for anything. They're going to have abundance, free electricity. And then finally, all of the people that have been living in struggle and fight and flight and survival mode for so long
Mm,
can actually come out of that first two, three chakras and develop their higher senses and their connection with the
mm.
higher realms. And so I think it's going to take time for that transition to happen. I don't even know if I answered your question because it's now just evolving into a
No, no.
conversation that keeps streaming.
Yeah, no, but this is really interesting because you look at the arc of life that we have had from our past, and it was always about you're born, you struggle, you achieve something, and then all of a sudden something boom at the very end. And there's always this fear, particularly for men, to lose their wealth, to lose that status, because once they achieved it, they're like, I don't want to go back to that. And that's going to fundamentally shift that concept about what we work toward. And I think that's really sort of the ethos of this conversation. It's like when we don't have to worry about the lack, and that is the lack of the resource that allows us to create. We don't know what to do, which comes
Mm.
into the other question is, what do you think the role right now of the star seed is in this stage of this process?
I think it's difficult to sum it up in one sentence because there's so many roles that have to be fulfilled. So it's really about um, switching on our gifts with our abilities, all of those things that we did, our years in business, those things were not for nothing. I'm talking about us and specifically, but everyone is different. So we each bring a different puzzle piece to the greater puzzle. So it's difficult to say this is our role right now. But I think if we had to generalize it, it is really right now kind of spiritual leadership in a way,
Mhm.
because we're going to be the stewards of the new earth. And so, whatever our unique gifts and abilities are, if we can put those together and do something that lights us up, that is going to lead the planet into a new era in whatever way that may be, whether it is spiritual guidance or it's something physical where we're going to rebuild certain structures. It's coming up with a new architectural principles that are going to be more in harmony with nature, or it's going to create new schools that are going to be teaching kids things that they really need to learn instead of all the mumbo jumbo that they keep them busy with.
I think the kids are actually teaching us right now because they come in much more advanced than we do.
Yeah.
But in terms of, like what our roles are, I'm meaning more energetically too, because right now I felt like that vision I had, and this feeling, sorry, that's my dog snoring in the background.
I don't even hear him.
Oh, good. Is that vision of saying, oh yeah, I knew that, and then saying, I didn't know that. It was trying to teach me how to react to when things are really complicated for the broader collective, I think. And that's what I mean. Like, is there other things that you think we'll be doing? Because I think our roles are really, we did a lot of that work and we've researched. And it's like, I don't know if you ever stop and look back and say, gosh, I know so many things. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
I know so many things.
Yeah.
And I think we know so many things for a reason. I'm
Mm-hmm.
curious if you're seeing like what you see for the star seeds, like right now, what space we should be holding as because we're
Mm.
we're we're here right now, aren't we? I mean, whether it's today, tomorrow, next week, next month, next year, this divine intervention is here.
Yeah. Well, I think, we do, as you said, we do have a lot of knowledge now that we gained over the last 5 years because we felt this urge to just research everything. And so we're
Mhm.
holding these pockets of information. And if you think about the 100 monkey effect concept, will we perhaps share these pockets of information and light with a collective through the quantum field? Is it something that maybe at some point they're going to just absorb? We did the hard yards because we signed up for this mission, this
Right.
awakening mission that is early. We were going to be the forerunners. We were going to do all the hard grafting for those to follow
What were
behind.
we thinking?
And perhaps a lot of this information we will either teach, whether in a formal or informal way, could be just, speaking to a friend and sparking a new idea, or it could be in a formal way where we maybe in a podcast educate people or even have classes or whatever it may be. But also just that information to just kind of blend into the quantum soup and eventually being absorbed by
Mm.
the others that come after us. And suddenly they just know things. And it's also this concept of remembrance. We are here to remember who we are and what we've
Mhm.
done in all these lives because we are ancient souls. The star seeds are not, young souls. They're old souls that have experienced a lot in many different planets and done and seen a lot. And so we're just going to hold the space and share the information, just like we now receiving these light codes through the sun and through all the solar activity.
Mm.
We're going to then share it with others,
Yeah.
whether intentionally or by just being in their presence. I don't know. And they will absorb it as and when they're ready. And even for us, that remembrance comes through now. When we're not ready to learn something, like maybe, I don't know, you're not ready to know that you were a warrior in Andromeda or whatever. Whatever that role was, it will come when you're ready to hear it, when you can integrate that kind of information into your life. And we are just those forerunners that are getting the information early and then sharing it with others in a way that are going to be easier for them to absorb. And
Mm.
I think that is probably one of our biggest roles. And also we are nodes of light on the planet. So we frequency holders in a way as well. Those that have done the spiritual work and raised their vibration to a certain level. It's like a light grid around the planet, and the entire planet's frequency is able to rise because of that and because of
Yeah.
where we've been placed in all these places around the world. Why on earth did I decide to come to Cape Town in this life? I don't know, but maybe I was supposed to be here, and the same with you. You were
Yeah.
supposed to be in Italy and exactly where you are because you were needed in that place. The frequency was needed. You were
Yeah.
needed perhaps being on, even living on a ley line or whatever it is. So I think it's so complex and wonderful to even
Yeah.
start thinking about it and start unpacking it.
It is really wonderful. And I do think that we've moved around too to have the ability to look at the patterns and have an appreciation how others may view things, which I think is the most fascinating thing is that when you really go to a different culture, it's not language that really separates you. It's how you believe things, how your culture raised you, because the culture, language is a reflection of the culture, but it never tells you exactly, and it takes time to understand. And that's been the most fascinating thing, being an American, but being in Italy, but having Italian background and going back and forth and seeing how my family and this sort of interacted. And it's an amazing learning experience of pattern connections on there. And it is really
Mm.
funny. And so right now, I'll sort of close it up by just sort of going into you and I both talk on our channels about news, about things that are happening around us. And I know for myself that whenever I hear anything that has a political undertone or overtone, because it's really quite a blatant right now. It's about, well, it's this is a Democrat or that's a this, and and here in Europe, the political parties and everything that's falling apart on that. I don't focus on that, but I do focus in on what they're telling us about what's going on with this supposed war, what's happening in the Middle East, how Israel is showing their cards about what they're doing. Those are the things that I focus on. And then sort of the details, such as, okay, we're shifting over. Why do we have this sort of ecosystem shift? And why is this law supporting banking of novel things with XRP? Those are the things I'm focused on. For you, you've sort of had a broader perspective. Tell us what you're focused on from the news point of view that intrigues you and helps you.
Well, I think first of all, it's very nice to see everything coming together really right now.
Yeah.
Like last night, I was just thinking, are we really here at world peace? Maybe there's a few dots to still, a few I's to dot and a few T's. We know that, Ukraine and Russia, but are we really at a point where we're about to have world peace?
Mm,
And, I do believe a lot of it is like part of the movie. A lot of it has been worked out perhaps years ago. It's just playing out now in the correct timing as things unfold. Again, it's like a big puzzle piece, like certain pieces of the puzzle not going to make sense until the other pieces are in place. So it had to happen in a certain sequential way, the rollout of events globally. But it is good to it's really like heartwarming to see it all come together in a way right now, because I'm sure with you as well, there were maybe times where like, are we still going in the right direction? Because it's looking a little bit wonky at the moment. I don't know. Have I been fooled? Is there really something going on in the background that is positive, for humanity? There were those times that we had the little doubts, but I really feel like things are falling in place now. And, even for the whole financial system that is changing, the dots are connecting for that to fall in place as well, because I believe we can't go into a new financial system until there's stability and world peace, because otherwise that chaos is just going to be an excuse for why there has to be another, you know so I think, in terms of redistribution of wealth, revaluation of currencies, you've got to be at a certain point there where there's peace. It's been settled now. Okay,
mm,
things are settled down. And
yeah.
I was just thinking last night, yeah, like peace is a real thing. Like people in 5 years are going to think like, wow, and we just had these perpetual wars. Why again? We're
Yeah.
not going to be able to understand why we were in this perpetual cycle of wars. And we actually at a point where peace, world peace, is a possibility now. And those that do believe in Jasara Nasara, that is one of the requirements as well. There has to be world peace for everything else to fall into place. Governments will go down in size. There will be, we'll go back to common law. And you see the precursors of all of these things falling into place right now. So it's really,
Yeah.
I just very comforting for me to see that we are really at the end of this movie. And perhaps there are a couple of rogue things still out there that's happening on the political front, but I think it's few and far between. And I just have an incredible state of peace right now, where I just see, good things ahead. And I don't
Mm.
even focus on the negative, because I also know we create our own reality in a way. So whatever we give energy, that's going to be collectively what we're going to be co-creating. So,
This is
yeah.
that's really, really important what you're just saying. It's about that the energy, which is exactly why I was asking the question about what news are you focused on. And I loved how you framed it to say that you're focused in on seeing how world peace is actually coming into our reality. And that's kind of energetically what you're holding space for, which is wonderful. And it's really true. And right now, what I'm seeing is that here in Europe, there's this fear. They still are living in fear. And to balance that fear and to stay in this frequency of, I see good, is really, I know, the purpose for right now, but sometimes it really angers. It can anger an Italian because they like to have a little bit of, discussion. But a lot of it is, I see a lot of people who know a lot about the financial markets or the way things work. It's like, it's impossible for this to happen, impossible for that. And it's like, interesting, interesting. How do we balance against that? And I'm trying not to give any of that impossible conversation any of my attention. So,
Mhm.
and I love it. And I'm going to use your words and say, focus in on what I see as the piece, because you're right. It is coming together. Everything is coming together in a beautiful way. Not to say it's easy for everybody, because we're all at a different stages of awakening, but it is coming together. So,
Absolutely. And sorry, that's something I need to mention when you ask what is our purpose right now, Starseeds. We are co-creating the new earth. And by focusing on the things that we want to give energy to, that's
mm,
how we co-create heaven on earth. And in a way,
Mm.
that's what we're responsible for, because we have the fuller picture of
Yeah.
what's coming. A lot of people don't have that. They
Yeah.
just focus because they're so trained to, like, is there a thief in the bush? Because as a humanity, we've lived with that for centuries. Watch out. Somebody's going to jump out of the bush and come for us.
Right.
So we're so focused on what negative could possibly occur that we forget that we're co-creating this
Mm.
reality. The wave does not become a particle, does not collapse into a particle until it's observed. And what is it that we're observing? What is it that we're focusing on? How do we want that wave to collapse? In what form do we want it to collapse
This
into?
is so beautiful because it's coming across in many different ways. Like I just heard one thing on TikTok that talked about the Seth material, which was one of the more technical ways of saying exactly what you're talking about, quantum physics and the observation of that and what we choose to observe. But I love that it's putting it in. We are here to co-create, and that is a big job, but it's a fun job because we do it. And I'm gonna go back to that vision I had about like, oh, is that really new? I didn't know that one. I think that was like a big sort of testing ground for me to continue to
Mm,
co-create on that. And one of the things on the financial side, because I did come from a venture capital background and innovation, so we suspended belief in many ways because you had to in order to think what could happen. But one of the things I keep on doing is saying that on the financial market is I see that you can use assets, not debt, assets to finance things.
mhm,
I get the deer in the headlights look for most people like, they don't know. And then also, but my daughter and I, who are doing this business together, I'll tell her, I said, you know what, sweetie? You know what? We're in the build stage. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to buy some XRP. And
mm,
that's going to be what it, and we're going to share that. We're going to share that 50-50. And instead of us paying a salary, which causes more debt, we're just going to buy some XRP and that's going to be the home. And she goes, oh, mom, I love that. I love that. She was open to it. I'm like, and that's great. Like, kind of like these silly little things, because then she'll tell two friends and they'll tell friends and then they'll do
mm.
that. And that
Exactly.
I thought was exciting. That was like, instead of the negative side of, well, the central bank is going down and the gold is going here. And it's like, you know what? Gold is very abundant in the world. They didn't want to tell you, but it's extremely abundant. Wait till we find that one out.
Exactly.
But it's okay. It's okay because I love that. But I love the co-creation. Well, Nina, I really loved having this conversation. I hope we can have another one. Would that be okay with you?
Yeah, I'd love to. This was really, really fun.
Is there anything that you'd love to share with people today that you're thinking about or feeling right now?
No, I think it's just, really taking responsibility and control of our mind and our thoughts and directing that in a direction where we are actually co-creating something positive for the future, because we are the creators, and our creation powers have been manipulated for too long. And that's why this predictive programming, the apocalypse programming, that something bad's going to happen, and then, oh, your mind goes there, and
Mhm.
voila, we created. And so, are we going to just take our mind away from the things that we don't want to create and just focus on what we do want to create, and don't worry about the details? Especially with a financial, how are things going to change? This can't be possibly, you know, change in the way that you're suggesting. Well, one day we'll wake up and it will just quantum shift into a new reality. And so think less about the details and the control of how it's going to happen, and rather
Mhm.
just focus on the outcome that we want to happen. Because, when the thoughts, the emotions that we feel around there, and the little actions that we take every day, even if it's small, if those things align, we can co-create something really wonderful. And
Yeah.
as star seeds and stewards of the new earth, that's our responsibility, our key responsibility, to do that. And it's a fun thing as well. We just have to
Yeah.
be disciplined, to keep that mind focused.
Yeah, that is the discipline. You're absolutely right to just focus on the what I want versus not what I want. the what I want. That's a beautiful way to do it. Well, Anina, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed. I'm so glad that we were able to speak, and I'm sure we'll have another conversation soon. But thank you very much. And this is Lisa from Question the Narrative, thanking everybody and wishing everybody a great day. Ciao.
Thank you so much, Lisa.